I wonder if you have the problem of leaky revenue in your MSP. This is the money your business should be earning, but it isn't, because it's quietly slipping away through avoidable gaps. For an MSP, leaky revenue usually shows up in places like unbilled work, perhaps engineers doing quick favours that never make it onto an invoice, scope creep in fixed fee contracts, underpriced services that haven't been reviewed in years, and missed renewals for licenses, support, or security tools. My special guest today is an expert at spotting everywhere that your business is losing money and making sure you stop every leak.
My name is Kim Simmons. I'm the CEO and founder of Cloud Contracts 365.
And it's so lovely to have you on the show, Kim. Now, you are obviously a lawyer based in the UK, but I know that you're going to give us plenty of advice today that MSPs all over the world can use. So it's not going to be specific legal advice, but it is going to be talking about how MSPs can stop something called leaky revenue. What is leaky revenue? You and I are going to dive into that in a couple of seconds. Let's just first of all find out a little bit about you. So have you always worked as a lawyer within tech, or is this something you've only been in recent years?
Yeah, so for my sins, I have only worked in tech pretty much the longevity of my career as a lawyer. I say that, it's been an absolute fantastic journey. So I've been a lawyer for over 20 years, 15 years has been dedicated to the MSP community, the MSSP community. So I know this community like the back of my hand, safe to say.
That's awesome. That's great. In fact, you know this community better than I do because I've only ratcheted up 9 years. It's almost like a comparison thing here of who's done the most number of years. Maybe it's kind of like being in MSP jail or something like that. Yeah. So what do the kind of work you do with MSPs, it is around this concept. I know you do lots of different things, but a lot of it is around this concept of leaky revenue. This was a term that you actually introduced me to, and I thought it was such a cool term. When we talk about leaky revenue, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, such a great question, Paul. So, as a lawyer, I'm always looking at the contracts that these MSPs have in place with their customers. And ultimately, as a lawyer, we have to always think about how are we going to protect the business? And when you're thinking about protecting the business, it's not just looking at things like data protection and liability. These are really important things in the contract, but it's looking at the everyday issues that MSPs face and how can you mitigate their risk, okay? So looking at that, what are the everyday kind of leaks, as I put them, in their revenue? And it's really interesting because when you start to look at it from that side and not just the legal side, but the commercial side, the lawyers actually can do a fantastic job at making sure those contracts are far more watertight than, sort of generic templates out there.
So are we talking about loopholes that allow clients to walk away from contracts, or are we, can you sort of dive more into what exactly, where the revenue would leak out through a bad contract?
Yeah, absolutely. So it spans across multiple things. Let's look at things like the term. A lot of MSPs, they sort of come to me and they say, no, we're used to doing 30-day rolling terms, right? 30-day rolling terms. I'm like, okay, but how does that coordinate with when you're selling NC licensing? Because you're going to have to commit them, right? And you have to provide support with their licensing. So if they can then leave your services, but you have to keep them onto the licensing, how is that going to reflect on your contracts? But also from a valuation point of view, if you've got 30-day rolling terms, already that's revenue, that's valuation out of the business because, someone who wants to go and buy or take over the business later on wants to have a more steady income stream. So that's number one. Looking at the termination rights, let's say some MSPs are willing to do the 12-month, minimum term with automatic renewals, that's great. But have you paid attention to when you're giving them the clients the right to terminate that contract? It shouldn't be 90 days at any time. It should be 90 days, for example, to terminate at the end of the term or the renewal term. So it's looking at terms, it's looking at termination rights, it's looking at price increases as well, because this happens all the time, especially on a renewal. MSPs, firstly, they don't pay attention to renewals. So our tool actually helps them to pay attention to the renewals. It reminds them when they're coming up. But on top of that, they can then do a price increase. I have so many MSPs who come to me and say, I've had a customer for 10 years who's never had a price increase. And I've just swallowed up the profitability of that. I've taken the hit myself. And I'm like, why would you do that? Well, we haven't bothered to put the right terms in the contracts. I don't want to rock the boat. Like, you absolutely have to rock the boat. These are not the customers you need to keep on, and your contracts have got to show your way of doing things. So price increases such as RPI or CPI, being able to give third-party increases at any point that third party increases to you. And of course, then getting consent if you're increasing above RPI, but always having that inflationary rate in your contracts. You don't have to get consent, you just lift up the price every year. So those are there's a lot more, by the way, Paul. I just don't want to keep on talking, but I love this subject so much.
I'm interrupting myself to ask, do you want to discover which areas of your MSP's marketing don't work and how to fix them? Well, fill in my marketing scorecard to discover where you're going wrong. You'll get an instant score for your MSP's marketing, highlighting which areas need work. Plus, I'll send you a personalized report telling you how to fix your biggest marketing challenges. Go to mspmarketingedge.com/scorecard, or better still, scan the QR code. One of the many interesting things that you talked about there was price increases. And you and I'm sure, both know MSPs, some of whom are on top of price increases and do them every year religiously. But it was really interesting for me to hear about the MSPs that don't do price increases religiously, and therefore they are losing out on that profitability. So tell us some of the other ways that you can lose revenue out of your MSP without realizing it.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Paul. Thank you so much. So in other senses, so it's price increase is one thing. NCE terms, they neglect to put the right NCE terms, which is committing the client to that 12 monthly term. That's something that happens quite often. And so there's no contract right to keep them in. There's another thing here that's really important. And it's a bit of a sensitive one. It's around the termination suspension of the services right. Here's why. Often you'll get a client who's missed a payment, right? Or they're about to miss a payment, or they've been bad payers all the way through. And the accounts team kind of know it, but there isn't really a contract term to support an MSP to say, hey guys, you know what? This is getting too much now. We need to suspend the services. We need to terminate the services. This is too much for us now. And the problem is this. If it's found that that particular customer goes insolvent, what the MSP is not understanding is that they are considered an essential supply of services under the Insolvency Act here in the UK, which means they can't turn them off at the point of insolvency, but they can turn them off before they are aware of the Insolvency Act. I cannot tell you this past year how many people have been subjected to insolvent businesses. It's terrible right now. And this is them having to take the hit of those licenses themselves and have to pay their distributor or Microsoft if they're going direct, because their distributor doesn't care. They're committed to 12 months. They have to pay for those licenses. So it's really things like that. You've got to get that right in your contracts, but also in your processes.
I mean, that just sounds like a nightmare scenario, having to pay for licenses on the behalf of a customer that isn't even paying you anymore. But let's broaden this back out to all MSPs around the world. Do you typically see, when you're working with MSPs, that at the point they get serious about contracts and getting all the legal terms and all of that right, that's the point that really rapid growth happens within the business, because they're just sort of taking away the winging it approach, the making it up as we go along approach, and they're getting serious about every aspect of their business. Is that what you see?
Absolutely. When MSPs understand that their operational excellence includes fantastic contracts that protect the business, that's when they start to see the growth trajectory, 100%, because they have cottoned on to a few things. Number one, the client base that they have and the type of clients that they need. And that's really important. And when they start to professionalize like that, when they start to, I hasten to use the word, but grow up a little bit, in that sense, they're realizing that the people that they're now selling into are far more operationally aware of business than what they're used to. And when their clients are needing that operational excellence from them, Having poor contracts to put in front of the customer is like losing one of your three halos. I call this the halo effect, the losing the halo effect. I don't know if you know about this, Paul, but typically people have three halos when they start a new relationship with a customer. And if you lose three halos, so three things that you do wrong, that's when people start to really question whether they've got the right supplier in place. Why lose your halo on poor contracts when you probably need to save that halo for poor delivery if something like that happens, or a missed P1 ticket? Save it for the things that really matter in your business and get the basics right.
I love that. And no, I hadn't heard of that three halos concept before, but that's an idea I'm going to pinch. So thank you very much for that. Kim, you've been wonderful to talk to. Thank you so much. Just tell us a little bit about what you do to help MSPs. You mentioned earlier that you have a tool. So tell us about that tool and what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul. And yeah, that three halo, I absolutely love it. I do a lot of customer journey workshops with my MSPs to kind of teach them how to get the client on board and onboarded really smoothly with great contracts and processes. So it's a good one to use for sure. My tool is called Cloud Contracts 365. It's designed just for MSPs, and it allows MSPs to go and create those fit for purpose templates. It's got all the things that I just mentioned, NCE, all the termination rights, everything to protect their business. It's a lot cheaper than going to a law firm and to lawyers. And they can create it. They can also review contracts. So if they've got vendor contracts, they can review. There's an AI tool in the platform that will basically show them what legal risk there is and what to do about it. And they can manage the contracts, e-signatures through to automatic renewal reminders. And we have an integration to Halo PSA as well. So it really helps them to kind of manage the quotation to contract link as well there. So my address is www.cloudcontracts365.com, and my email is kim.simmons@cloudcontracts365.com.
Paul Green's MSP Marketing Edge.